What if I told you that you should just do the work without actually worrying about any outcomes? Welcome back to the Idea Supply Chain, where we take a look at where ideas come from and what makes those ideas valuable. Today, I wanted to get into the idea of doing the work first. And this touches on a lot of aspects of life and is kind of against conventional wisdom, both in what you're probably being told and in what you're seeing. Because everything right now is very, very results focused. You got to be showing results. I think results actually aren't that important. And here's why. So, one of the things that I've really been focusing in on is this idea of doing the work before you get paid. And that sounds weird, right? So many people are trying to take advantage of you and get you to do work that you're not being paid for. Interview processes for jobs are typically really, really broken. They'll have you go through 6 or 7 interviews, do all this work. They might try to steal from you. That work that you've put in, they might use that for their business. People are trying to pay you as little as possible. And here I am telling you that you should actually do the work before you get paid. But there's a really important reason for that. And that is you're doing work either way, right? Either you're putting in the work of trying to be allowed to do the work. That's a permission system. You're doing all of this effort that is of absolutely no value. Interviews in one place don't translate to interviews for another, except in like your personal experience. And that may or may not be helpful depending on how good or bad the interview experience is and what the next interview experience is like. So my suggestion is all of that time spent on, preparing for interviews and understanding what they're going to ask and really being able to nail that so you can get this job that you want. Instead, focus on doing work that proves you can do the job and that you understand what a given person, company, whatever, what their problems are and how you could help. And this is a big mindset shift. It's not the normal way you would think about it, but it actually does something very valuable because once you already have the work, first of all, you've created it under your own initiative. So you've already done this and nobody else owns it. And so you can take it to a company and say, hey, I did this thing based on, you've got this job. I would be interested in this position. And I did this thing based on my knowledge and experience and, my understanding of like what type of company you are and what your needs are. And this thing is going to be a much better representation of who you are and what you understand about the current state of the world than whatever you can fit on your resume that makes it through the AI filters. And I've talked about that before, but I wanted to get a little more concrete with this because I think it also goes into the realm of like consulting and things like that. And this has been my approach lately because one of the things I've realized is I was so worried about getting permission to work with somebody and I need someone to reach out and want me to work with them and then we'll figure out how much they'll pay me. And I'm really bad at figuring out like what my value is because I don't have insight into the other person's systems. I don't know, what their financials are. And so instead of doing things that way, I've started looking at like, okay, who would I just love to work with? What can I do to help create value for them? And then as I build this stuff, first of all, I have the stuff kind of for this individual person or company, but I also have an example that I can show to other people and say, hey, look, like this is the type of stuff I do. And because I'm very open with what I'm doing, I'm talking a lot about the process and like who I'm excited to be able to potentially work with and how I think I'll add value. And so what I'm doing is I'm actually creating content around the work that I'm putting in. And this is a very valuable skill to have. And I was talking with somebody the other day about whether or not it was worth it to share your experience, share your story online. She said that her initial impression of it was that it was kind of an egotistical thing to do, right? Like, who the fuck am I? Why should people care? Like, why would I be writing my stuff down online and like talking about me? It's not about me, right? Well, yes and no. The way I look at it is sharing your individual story online is going to be really, really important going forward, because with AI, everybody's going to be able to give the impression of being able to do work. But the people who have actually done the work are going to really understand in a lot more detail what good actually looks like. And this is something I've really keyed in on, because with AI, it's very easy to get to like 75% of a master skill level. But true mastery is actually not in the 0 to 75% piece. It's in that last 25%. It's knowing what tweaks and what slight changes need to be made in order to make something truly great. And the vast majority of people won't be able to tell the difference between 75 and 100%. They just won't. They don't have the trained eye. And this is exactly where large language models are going to have issues going forward. They're trying to train this, intelligence and knowledge into an AI model. But even with human feedback, humans don't know the difference between 75% and 100%. They don't have the experience or the skills necessary to differentiate between the two. And that's where humans truly can shine. They've got experience and taste. It's information that's outside of the training set. It's real world interactions. It's understanding people at their core. AIs don't have that. AIs know what people are asking for, and they know like what knowledge they've kind of had compressed into them, but they don't have insights into like how the world is changing and real world situations that impact the responses of people using the AIs. And this ends up having a lot of like really complicated, convoluted impacts on how AIs perform. But when you're an expert, it's actually pretty easy to get an AI to create 75% of what you know. That's the easy part. And so what you can do is you can actually create something that is 75% of your knowledge that you can do effortlessly. And this is something that I've started to build for people. Like, hey, I know the service that I offer. This is a company that I want to work for. Great. I can scan their website, extract the information that I've determined is necessary for the thing I need to create something that's 75% of that, and then send it to them and say, hey, this is a thing I did for you. It's yours to keep if you want it. If you want to use it, great. If not, totally fine. And I also offer a service to really work with you to craft it specifically to your very like specific current needs. And, basically I used your website to do it, and maybe that's accurate, maybe it's not. But if you'd like to work together, I'd be happy to do so. And then what you do is you actually flip the power in the relationship, because you've already given them something. Now the action is on them. If they want to work with you, they have to prove that they value you enough for it to be worth your time. And it's hard to give up that level of control. But also, you have to look at it like you're actually taking power back, and you're not giving power to the hiring process, which is terrible and inhumane. And as I was saying to someone the other day, it couldn't be more painful if you designed it to be as painful as possible. Everything about this system is broken. And we've got companies that are, putting in hiring freezes and all of this because they're trying to plan out things that are extremely complicated and they can't plan for the future. And this is why I'm a big believer that people need to have economic power over their own futures. And this is when I talk about abundant systems. I want to give people the ability to never have to rely on an outside person or company for their livelihood, because that's when society really can start to break down. it sucks to have someone have power over you like that. Been fired. I know how that feels. It's not great. It changes your plans, it changes your approach to everything. You have to suddenly adapt. And, I'd been preparing for being ready for that situation just in case, because I didn't want anyone to ever have that kind of power over me. But guess what? I still wasn't quite ready when it happened. And so it's been a struggle. I've had to learn a lot on the fly, and there's been a lot of stress and sleepless nights and, pain in learning the process. But as I've started to get this, I've started to shift my focus into who do I want to work with? How can I show them that I can provide value in these new and interesting ways? How can I share that in my writing, my YouTube videos, all of it? And, the benefit to kind of being open and sharing my story for the last 4 years, it doesn't always show up immediately. I did go viral super early on, and that sucked. Don't actually recommend that. It's certainly not the way I did it. I did it the worst way possible. But what I did is I created a body of work. And so when I was talking with my publisher, I was talking about my views on how money works and how prices are just really compressed data and all of this. And so she's like, hey, do you have any writing that you can share on these thoughts? I'd love to go deeper and dig into it and give you some feedback based on what you've already created. And so I started going back and pulling out blog posts that I'd written that maybe have 10 or 20 views, if that, on a lot of them. And they've been out there for 4 years, but I haven't really been pushing them because I write stuff down and then I forget about it. And honestly, there's probably a lot of other stuff all over the internet that I've completely lost track of because I'm kind of scatterbrained with it. But within, half an hour, I was able to compile over 100 pages of my writing, which totally blew my mind. I'm ADHD and spastic as hell. That's one of the whole things I've worried about with writing this book is how can I write something big? I've really focused on creating things in small chunks at a time because that's what I can do well. I optimize for super small, fast things because that's all I can guarantee I'll be able to produce in any given setting. I'm not great at structuring a process to be able to, deliver, okay, here's these pieces broken down and I can deliver this piece, then this piece, and this piece. No, I'm all over the place, and eventually I kind of just end up with enough to put it together quickly. So my mind was blown when I ended up with this document that was over 100 pages long. And, I kind of tied this in when a friend of mine, another writer on Twitter, was talking about the fact that her newsletter just turned 6. And, she's published on and off, consistently, inconsistently for 6 years. And I said, zooming out on a long enough time scale, inconsistency ends up looking really consistent. And that's something that gets lost. And I think especially if, you're ADHD and kind of scattered and you're used to feeling like that's a really negative thing, if you put your heart into something over a long time frame, if you commit to something and just share what you're thinking, it doesn't have to be polished. Published is better than not done at all. And so early on, I realized that I wanted to just get ideas out there. And guess what? That means I didn't get a ton of readers. I didn't go viral on my posts. And looking back, I actually realized that was probably very intentional because I did go viral once. And again, it sucked. I didn't want to do that ever again. And so I was really self-sabotaging in a way to make sure that anything I did never went viral. I just published quietly. Maybe I posted a link on Twitter. And then that was it. I didn't talk about it anymore. I didn't share it with people. I didn't try to grow anything. I let the internet do the work, except it didn't, because that's not how the internet actually works. It's how I wanted to believe the internet worked, but that's not quite it. And, looking back, I realized that just putting in the work, though, now I've got this ability to showcase to people, oh yeah, hey, um, here's like all the stuff that I put in. And when you can deliver that to people, man, all of a sudden their level of trust in you goes way up, because you're like, oh yeah, no, I've been working on this for like 4 years. Here's a 100-page document of all the shit I've been thinking about. That's a powerful statement, because most people can't do that. And when you pair that with the ability to talk through ideas very deeply, and this is something that I've really worked at, and I've gotten a lot of compliments on that lately. People are like, oh man, you're so well spoken when you're talking about these ideas. I can listen to you talk about them for hours. Well, it's because I put in the work. When I first started trying to build relationships online and get noticed, I was terrible at it. And that's the autistic side of me. People are really hard. And so when I realized I was having trouble doing this, I literally started out by talking to like spammers who like messaged me. And I did that because I knew what they were doing. I had no interest in actually like doing anything real, but it just built that muscle of being able to talk, being able to respond. And then from there, I moved up to actually like starting to interact with people more. And then I started getting on Zoom calls, and I started talking about things a little bit more. And then I started a YouTube channel where I'm getting on video and I'm trying all these different things. And, eventually I kind of changed that to where now it's just me talking in front of the camera. I'm very, very comfortable doing this now because I've just done the work. And I'm finally to the point where people are like, wow, you're good at this. Like, what's your secret? My secret is that I was willing to be bad at it for years. So whether it's talking in front of a camera or whether it's, writing, and, people are saying, hey, actually, really good writer, because I'm finally sharing my writing with people. So they're actually reading it. And when you put in like 4 years of work and don't bother to actually like show it to anybody, and you finally start showing it to people, they're like, yeah, wow, you're really good. Well, yeah, again, but you have to show it to people. That's the part that I, again, finally doing. Um, but this all goes back to the idea of being willing to do the work before you see the results. And there were a lot of times when I was really hoping for very specific results. And guess what? They never came. Again, a lot of it came from self-sabotage and, trying to avoid the really painful situation from early on in my writing career. And being part of Foster, this cohort specifically has really helped me dig into all of that and the feelings associated, and understanding why I approached things the way I did. But I still put in the work. And again, that's the most important thing. When you can show somebody that you've put in the work, you're going to have a much easier time than somebody who has a one-page resume with some sort of credentials, some sort of experience outlined. There's just not enough information in a one-page resume that can tell people how good you are. It's a broken system right there. So when you show someone something that you've created, and then you can back it up with 100 pages of stuff that you've written about while thinking about it, boom, suddenly you're an authority. And then that starts to increase demand. That increases your price. That increases your value. And suddenly what used to be really, really hard starts to become a lot easier. And so if you're willing to put in the work ahead of time, before you see the results, before you get paid, before you get these actual results, the results you do get are going to be much better in the end. And so I'm experiencing this finally. It's been a long time coming. And I kept telling myself that that's how it was going to work, but I had to overcome a lot of internal resistance in order to do that. And now the work that I'm putting out into the world, the generosity I've had in just helping people for free and giving my knowledge and insights, being willing to just put my calendar out there and talk to all sorts of random people about random things, that's finally starting to pay off. And people are in my corner. They're rooting for me. They're wanting to help me. and the results are starting to really shift. And when that happens, that is a magical fucking experience. So do the work first. Trust that the results will follow at some point. It's probably going to take way longer than you think, especially when there's something inside your brain blocking you from doing what you need to do to actually get the results. And that's why I think coaches are really helpful. If you need a coach, like I do some coaching, and I know a lot of coaches based on kind of where you're having the issues. I can definitely recommend those. So feel free to ask, because coaches can help you unlock, because they're that external view. They can see from the outside, and internally, like, again, I'm pretty good at like identifying my own blocks, so I thought. But when you think you're good at it, you assume that you're identifying all the blocks and working through them. And sometimes there's a bigger one just outside your field of vision, that's really blocking you from getting to where you want to go. And having that external viewpoint is actually huge. And that's why I do believe in a future where everybody has coaches on all sorts of things in life, because coaches are compressed understanding. They see the same thing from a lot of different people and can show you that. They can, help you get views from the crowd to help you kind of understand yourself. And that individualized experience and feedback, I think, is absolutely vital. And I actually just had a coach reach out who wanted to work with me, and I'm really excited for it because I've been following his stuff for a long time and I really admire him. And so I'll have more on that later at some point. But yeah, like, good things are happening because put yourself out in the world, you put in the work. Eventually, people will see that and recognize it and reward it. And once it does, man, things start to really snowball from there, and they start to get a lot easier. So excited to share more as that comes about. But I did want to share some of these, stories and insights because they are extremely helpful, I think. And it's some things that I wish I had truly understood earlier on, like I thought I did. But again, the more you do, the more experience, the better understanding you earn. And so that's the trick. Do the work first. The outcomes will take care of themselves. And yeah, that's it for today. Thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next video.